There are 7 women from the Bible who have a common ailment of barrenness. Of course, now we know that men can have issues too, but back then, all the pressure was on the women to be fertile. As we liken scriptures to our own lives and our own struggles, we can ask ourselves, what is the moral of this story? What can we learn from these women's experiences? The first story is that of Sara's. Sara was promised to have children that numbered the sands of the sea and the stars in heaven. 3 messengers came to her husband when she was almost 90 years old and told him that she would have a child. Even though she herself was past childbearing years, she asked a faithful question. She said, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Sara's prayers and desires were fulfilled, and she had a son. Their descendants are the whole house of Israel and the tribal lineages that now are innumerable. The next woman is Rebecca. She was adored and beloved by her husband, who fell in love with her the moment he saw her. She was a covenant wife and understood this role. When her family sent her to be married, they said, "Thou art our sister. Be thou the mother of thousands of millions." When Rebecca did not have children, her husband took the initiative and fervently prayed. His prayer was granted, and Rebecca had twins. The next woman who struggled with barrenness was Rachel. Rachel was so desperate for children that she said to her husband, "Give me children or I shall die." Rachel eventually did have 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Her eldest son became the covenant son and one of the most acclaimed prophets of the Old Testament. Some of her descendants are Samuel, Jonathan, Esther, Joshua, Lehi, and Nephi. Another woman from the Old Testament who was barren was the wife of Manoah of the tribe of Dan. An angel appeared to her and gave her special instructions for a pregnancy diet. This included not having any alcohol and no unclean thing, which probably included many meat products. She told her husband about this revelation, and he wanted to know for himself. Then the revelation was given to him, and her husband was panicked and thought that they would die because they had seen God. And she said, "No, if God wanted to kill us, then he would not have shown us all these great things." She was the first to receive this revelation and hear about the prophecy of her son who would deliver their people. She and her husband prayed together and asked God how they should raise this child who would be such an influential and miraculous person. Their child was born, and they named him Samson. They quickly realized they would need all the heavenly help that they could get in raising a child with not only superpowers, but who had a wild side to him as well. The next barren mom is Hanna. Her husband absolutely adored her, but she was unable to get pregnant. The Bible says that she was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. Her husband tried to console her by saying, "Am I not better to thee than 10 sons?" No. I'm sure he meant well by saying that, but no woman wants to have her husband compared to a child, and definitely not 10 children. Hanna often went to the temple fasting and praying for a child. Eli the priest said that the Lord would grant her her desire. Even though she still wasn't pregnant, she no longer was distressed or sad. This says a lot about her faith, even though the blessings had not yet happened. She later gave birth to the prophet Samuel and 5 other children. The next woman is known as the Shunammite woman. Though her name is not mentioned, she is referred to as a great woman who cared for the needs of the prophet Elijah. She said to her husband that she perceived that this prophet was a holy man, and she made him wonderful accommodations for when he would come through town. The prophet and his servant asked her what she would want in exchange for the generous accommodations, and she asked for nothing. However, the prophet promised her that she would embrace the son, and later this blessing was fulfilled. The last woman is from the New Testament, and this is Elizabeth. Like Abraham and Sarah, Elizabeth and Zacharias were old. They were both righteous people and have served in their church and their community. Zacharias was visited by an angel, and he was told that Elizabeth would conceive and that the child would be named John, later known as John the Baptist. In her 6th month of pregnancy, Elizabeth was visited by one of her other relatives, and this was Mary, the mother of Jesus, who was pregnant through miraculous conception. These two women were able to support each other through their pregnancies, which many would not understand or might misjudge them for. A few commonalities between all of these women is the struggle. Often these struggles were long-term and sometimes lasted decades. Another theme is hope. This is something that most likely they thought about every single month, wondering if this was the time for them. For some women, there was shame involved, social persecutions, and concern over her husband's thoughts regarding the situation. In many of these cases, there was lots of desperate prayer to the point of covenanting with God. Ultimately, what every one of these stories has in common is that it's about a righteous desire or a promise that has not yet been fulfilled. There you go. Now it's your turn to think about what ways have you been barren, meaning what are some of your righteous desires and promises that have not been fulfilled yet? Sometimes the modern day women of God pray for decades. They hope, bargain, and plead with the Lord for a righteous desire or a blessing to finally be fulfilled. In this context, we are all barren in some way, and we can gain hope and greater understanding in God's timing by studying with compassion barren women who are patiently waiting in faith.